Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Your Forest podcast, round 3. And I have your favorite podcast guest on again today, Derrick Kreger-Smith. I think we can all agree he's the best guest we've had on.
You can't find anyone else. You've been looking, you've been trying, and here I am again.
I haven't been trying that hard. Most of them just trying to make sure that everything makes sense. So far, I don't know if it has.
Well, I can't help you there. I'm probably more of a chaotic agent in this podcast.
Judging by the number of people listening to the podcast, I don't think it's making a whole lot of sense to anybody. But anyways, okay. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about forest resources, forest values, basically things you can do in the forest, things you can do outdoors, all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about the importance of all these different values and just a different, little bit further away from forest management, just talking about what's out there. People don't really realize. They think that sometimes just the forest, the only thing that's out there is minerals and oil and gas and maybe wood fiber, but there's a lot more going on. So once we say it all kind of sounds common sense, but we'll just put it out there and see what people think.
Yeah, we're going to do bullet point. It's going to be a 4-minute podcast. And there will be no explanation. It will just be a list. And then we'll say, have a good night.
Yeah, that's it.
That'll be it. Yeah.
Unlike last time where we just rambled on continuously from our brains trying to come up with content.
Yeah.
This time will hopefully be less like that. Anyways, okay. So obviously one of the first real values I guess there is in the forest, one of the most obvious ones is wood fiber. Wood fiber, people worry about it. They think that maybe there's better options out there for building material. Maybe you want brick, or maybe you want hemp, or maybe you want any number of things,
concrete,
right?
steel, glass.
All those things. The problem is all of those things create irreparable damage. You could put it that way. Wood fiber is, in my opinion, and I feel like a lot of people's opinion, if you really were to look into it, it's one of the truly only renewable building resources we have on the planet. Even people will argue, well, no, hemp's better. Hemp's got a better...
More uses, it's faster. You can grow more usable fiber.
It's a stronger fiber. All these things, right? There's a lot of benefits from hemp. The problem with hemp is that growing hemp is another agricultural system. Agricultural systems work awesome. We depend on them. However, they're not sustainable in that they require a lot of input. They require all kinds of fertilizers,
irrigation.
Yeah.
You're going to have your carbon footprint because you're going to have lots of machinery that's going to be tilling and working and harvesting. You'll probably use insecticides and herbicides and everything else, just like any other agricultural product. It's the same thing as canola or wheat.
Yeah, pesticides, herbicides, take them or leave them. That's a whole different thing. But it's an agricultural system. It's not sustainable in that it doesn't sustain itself on its own, unlike forest resources like wood fiber. Wood fiber, it is managed in North America, at least, to the point where it's very hands-off management. The management that's done is very effective and efficient, and there's minimal impact on the landscape, and basically allow the trees to grow for 60 to 100 years and then remove them. But in that time, they're dropping all kinds of litter, replenishing the organic matter on the floor. They're replenishing everything. Everything is basically a natural system. It's as if we weren't there. As far as the management is concerned, we don't fertilize the forest. No. We're not. The biggest thing that we would do would be maybe in regeneration. If they cut something that was a wetter area, they might prepare the seed bed to make it easier for it to take. But after 10 or 15 years, you don't know that that's there anymore. It just kind of washes down into a normal, forest floor.
It looks like the rest of the forest.
Yeah, it looks exactly the same. So
people often criticize the fact that forestry doesn't take the branches or the needles or some of what we consider waste. But at the end of the day, when you just leave that in the block and on the land base, that decomposes and then that helps feed the next generation. And that's why we don't have to fertilize after a cut. It's because there's a lot of material that's going right back into the nutrient cycle.
Totally. It's sustainable. All right. And that's the difference between that and agriculture. We need agriculture. We can't produce the yields that agriculture does because we are more of a hands-off approach. However, for building materials, I don't think it gets any better, more sustainable, more environmentally friendly than wood fiber. So there we go. Yep. Now that's kind of out of the way. We can all hopefully agree that wood fiber is the best way to build stuff. Okay. So another one of the forest values or outdoor values that the trees provide and vegetation provides is air quality. Air quality, or I'm assuming people know that trees breathe in CO2 and they breathe out oxygen. We'll keep it as simple as that. The boreal forest in itself is the forest that we have in North America and across Russia. But it doesn't provide a whole lot of the world's oxygen. It provides like a 1% or 2%. I don't think it's a whole lot. Most of the oxygen that's provided is provided by phytoplankton and aquatic species. But the rainforest provides a lot. I think it's 25 to 35% because they have such a high yield. Everything's growing so fast.
Yeah.
Everything is coming back all the time. So there's constant growth, and I don't think there's a lot of fires as far as from what I can tell. I don't know a lot about the rainforest, but it seems like they don't have a lot of destructive activity going on besides
man-made disturbance.
Man-made disturbances, yeah. It's a good way to put it. So air quality. So trees help remove air pollutants by trapping particulate matter in their leaves, needles, and bark. There's been studies done on putting green spaces into like urban environments, and it actually does do a fantastic job of cleaning the air, making it cleaner. It works great. It helps to sequester greenhouse gas emissions. It's all good. These are all good things. You want the trees to help you do that, and planting green spaces. It makes it's been proven to make a big difference. So you want trees in your cities, in your yards, in your neighborhoods. It makes a noticeable difference.
Yeah, and that's just the air quality value of having a tree in an urban environment.
Yes, just
a
air
million
quality.
Other emotional and societal and cultural
aesthetic, all
and
kinds
aesthetics
of
of having green spaces built into your urban environments for sure.
Totally. So I got some numbers written down here. So it turns out 1 treed acre equals about 18 people's worth of air annually. That's how much air is being pumped out. Obviously, oxygen is being used by lots of different things, not just people, lots of other animals out there.
Including other plants.
Yeah, other plants as well. Yeah. Okay. What other plants breathe oxygen, Derek?
Only all of them. Matt. What kind of question is that?
No, I'm just...
What kind of oceans have water?
I was trying to prompt you.
I was trying
to prompt you to go into it, but you didn't catch the drift. So we're going to move on and pretend that never happened.
Oh, I see. I will not engage this.
Anyways.
It's another podcast.
So one average tree in North America produces about 260 pounds of O2 per year. But like I said, overall, the boreal forest is roughly, I think, 2% of the world's oxygen availability. Those are the numbers I've read up, though, so I believe they're correct. You can go ahead and check them if you want.
I'm too busy for fact checking.
Don't trust me.
Everything I hear online is true.
Yeah, if you don't want to trust me, just go ahead and check it yourself. You can find the numbers. They're out there. I'm in the ballpark anyways. So yeah, air quality. It's an awesome value. It's a good thing to have.
Huge.
I like breathing clean air.
We only need it
don't like
to
smog.
live. Yep.
Yeah, it's great.
You know, all the time.
Air. Let's keep that going. So,
what's that? I want that to be a slogan for something. Air. Let's keep it going.
We can make some T-shirts.
It's the worst government slogan ever.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to the point of this podcast where I can start making T-shirts with just all the ridiculous things.
Like an air quality testing contractor or something for like oil and gas. Like you're going to well sites and your slogan's just air. Let's keep that going.
Let's keep that going. Anyways,
good, right?
Yeah, it's good. Okay, so another value that the forest holds for society is hunting, trapping, and fishing. We'll talk about them all kind of in the same context.
Just general recreation, sport enthusiast.
Yeah,
wildland usage.
Yeah, I guess like that includes
hiking, ATVs
for recreation. Yeah,
if you're sledding in the winter,
camping,
snowshoeing,
dog
cross
sledding,
country skiing, dog sledding,
all that kind of stuff. Yeah. All that available, right? So
anytime you want to play in the forest in your backyard.
Yeah, these are all things that people find a lot of personal value in and want to go out and utilize the forest for that. And we want to keep the forest around so that people can continue to do that, and they don't have to do it inside of Olympic ring or something where they're surrounded by concrete and there's no trees to look at and no birds singing or nothing going on. You want to be able to do these things in the nature in the nature. Yeah. So anyways,
another good slogan.
But hunting, trapping, and fishing specifically, kind of controversial. People, they see hunters as this Disney effect kind of terrible,
You
guy-
killed Bambi's mom
Bambi's
or
dad. Bambi's
Is it
mom
dad?
died in a fire, I think.
Oh, good Disney. Keep that up.
Or something. I forget. I don't remember. It's
man.
been a while since I watched Bambi.
Yeah.
I was young. I was non-existent when that came out.
Yeah.
Was it like the 60s?
I'm male, so I haven't seen it in several years.
Anyways, so hunting, people see us see us. I'm a hunter. I do hunt and fish. I don't trap, but we'll get into that. Anyways, people see it as a bad thing. They think that, like, why the heck would you want to go out and shoot this poor innocent animal and eat it? And like, it's so beautiful. It provides all kinds of aesthetic to the landscape. But the honest to God truth is, if you were to think about it in the sense of eating meat, if you're not a vegetarian or a vegan, which that is fine. Like, I totally support that decision. That is it's a very intense decision. I don't know if I can make that decision myself, but I get it. I totally sympathize with it. But if you are not, if you do eat meat, then in my opinion, the most ethical way to consume meat is to procure it yourself through hunting and fishing and even trapping. You're getting a highly nutrient-rich meat. It's very lean, and you're eating it from an animal that's been living in its natural environment. You're not eating an animal that's been eating something that it's not supposed to be eating. Right. It's eating exactly what it's supposed to be eating. It's lived its life to its fullest up until that point. It lived a normal life. Does no idea that it's being, hunted down. It's just doing what deer or elk or moose do.
Range
Yeah, they're
animals,
just doing what they want to do, right? And whereas, animals like pigs and cows and chickens, not so much, right? We've domesticated them.
You're spiraling. Pull it back.
I know. I got whatever. I'm getting out of hand. But anyways, hunting and fishing, super important. So meat availability, big one.
Yeah, but there's also
it's the best
like
meat in my opinion.
There's a historical and a cultural practice to it too, right?
Yeah. So there's tons to it.
Like if we look at trappers in the province, there's no new trap lines being issued.
Yeah.
Like all the trap lines that are out and available exist and are owned.
Yeah.
And so most of the time they're passed down through families or
Yeah.
they're sold at incredibly high prices because they're so valuable and they're limited. So if most trappers these days, like the price of furs dropped and the cultural shift is away from true furs and into fake furs and stuff. Yeah, most trappers aren't making a ton of money these days. So it is like, oh, my grandpa trapped. And then my dad trapped with my grandpa and I went out with them and now I'm trapping. And especially if you get into any of the like First Nations use, trapping is a really traditional part of the culture.
Huge. That's
I
how
never want to
everything.
completely get rid of it because there is like, that's a cultural practice that should always be available.
Yeah.
So
It's there's some one thing that people don't realize too about trapping is it's the foundation of Canada's existence.
oh yeah,
When you look at
pioneers and First Nations, yeah,
if it wasn't for the fur trade, Canada would not have had the economy it had back at the beginning.
Yep.
And we wouldn't be the same country. We'd be a totally different country. It drove the expansion towards the west. It was beaver pelts in particular were super highly valued, and back in Europe they wanted them for fashion, for hats and all kinds of things, and Canada exploited that, and we made a lot of money on it, and it allowed this country to develop into the country it is today. So anybody that is upset that trapping happened or it was ever a thing, maybe think about it a little bit more, do a little bit more research. Like I said, it was a super important economic component back in the day. Back in the day.
Economy that generated ultimately led the colonists to realize the value of the territory and then later seek independence in the U.S. through, a little bit more of a violent conflict, and in Canada, through a little bit more civil means. But ultimately we were like, hey, we've got a good thing going. We're own people. We shouldn't be getting the raw deal we're getting through the current trade system. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like Derrick was saying, it's not as valuable as it once was, but we owe what this country is to that. There's an argument for that. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about trapping. So hunting, fishing, and trapping. The other thing is, the big one, argument pro, is conservation money. So people look towards, they want to protect wolves, even though wolves aren't an endangered species in Alberta. You want to protect grizzly bears, you want to protect caribou. There's all kinds of endangered species or species at risk that we want to protect for. And a giant portion of that money, I should actually have the number up. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot. It's most of it, as far as I believe, comes from hunting and fishing. Yeah, it comes from the tags, comes from all the licenses that people are buying. That's where all of it comes from, because nobody else is like, anyone that's listening, have you ever contributed money out of your own pocket, of your own free will, to a conservation effort to try and protect the caribou? No. Chances are you probably haven't. Yeah. But you know what? I have, because I've hunted and fished my entire life. Yeah. It all goes back. It's not saying it goes directly just to caribou or wolf or whatever it is, or grizzly bears, but it goes towards conservation efforts in Alberta and the management of those species. And those species need to be managed because we exist on the landscape. Yep. As soon as we took part in fragmenting the landscape, breaking it up, and utilizing the resources that are available, we now are a part of that ecosystem. And people want to say we're unnatural. We're not. We're a natural being. We're part of the ecosystem now. We have a huge effect on it, whether we like it or not. And that means we have to manage game animals and fish and all that in the same way. So it's all tied in together.
Even if you look at fishing, so I'm aware of a few ponds by Drayton Valley that get stocked. Mm-hmm. And there's not some private guy who's stocking all of those ponds as an individual.
No.
The government is going out and putting fish in those ponds. So those fish were raised, they were collected, they were transported, and they were dropped off. And who's paying for that? Mm-hmm. Your fishing license is paying for that.
Yeah.
Because they know if they weren't stocking ponds and giving people small little ecosystems to overfish, they'd be overfishing the rivers and the larger ecosystems. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So they have to step in. They have to boost the natural population, but they also have to pay for it. So they pass it on to the people who are going to be fishing. Mm-hmm. You can pay for all the fish that we need to put back on the landscape. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm not paying for the fish in that pond.
Yeah.
Because I'm not buying a fishing license.
No, exactly. Yeah.
I'm not buying hunting tags. I'm not, paying any of those licensing fees.
Yeah. And so, that's just another thing. It's a very convoluted argument. People get confused by it. But it's true. That's what's paying for most of the conservation efforts in Canada and even across the world. You even look places like in Africa, people blow up about the Cecil the Lion thing or all those situations in Africa, right? And love it or hate it, but a lot of those species, like elephants, like lions, they would not exist if it weren't for hunting, because all of that money, supposedly, this is what I've read up. Don't take me on as the authority on this matter, but from what I've read, it seems like all of that money, someone pays like $300,000 to shoot a rhino, right? That rhino is an old bull. He's killing other rhinos. He is a problem animal, and he's just making it worse. So the better situation, they could go out and they could shoot it themselves, and they lose that opportunity of getting the conservation money to help save the remaining rhinos or the remaining lions and all that kind of thing, right? So, but in those places like Africa, if you didn't have the hunting money to pay for those nature preserves where these animals exist, chances are those animals would be poached because people there need food, and they don't care that it's the last rhino that's available. They need to eat. So they're going to protect their family, and you can't really blame them for that. But so creating these nature preserves that are giant areas that are patrolled, it allows those animals to exist. And if every once in a while one of them has to get shot, then it's for the greater good. And there's so many arguments around this. A lot of you may disagree with me. This is the science as I know it, and it's logical. And yeah,
my understanding is that they're allowing the sale of licenses to hunt animals with sustainable populations.
Yes.
So if it's the last white rhino, you don't get a license to shoot the last white rhino. You get a license to take, one male lion, and maybe they only give out 3 of those licenses a year or something, or they'll give out 20 for this gazelle or 20 for this impala or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So they're allowing you to do a really controlled hunt on populations that can support a loss in order to generate the funds to protect the ones that are incredibly threatened, like all those armed guards that all they do all day is follow around the last 4 rhinos.
Yeah, that's right.
To shoot back at poachers, right? Like someone's paying for that.
Yeah.
Those 15 people, all their ammunition, all the time, all the fuel, all the water, all the food.
Yeah. Do you want the government paying for that, or would you rather have private funds paying for that?
Yeah. Like,
save
you
that
shot
government
an impala,
money for something more important.
and it pays for these rhinos to be protected for 2 months.
Yeah.
So
it's convoluted. It's kind of weird to wrap your head around it. It's a odd way to go about conserving things, and people. I saw a really funny What was it? It was
Speaking of the rhinos going extinct, here's something really funny.
what the heck's his name? What the heck's his name?
Is it the dentist?
No. The comedian, not Jim Gaffigan. Damn it. Anyways, there was a comedian on a talk show, and he was sitting there. He was going off about hunting and conservation, and it was really funny. I enjoyed it, but he was misled, misguided, and he didn't really understand the arguments. Plus, he's trying to be funny, so let's leave it at what it is. It was just trying to be funny. That's all it was. What the heck is that guy's name? The British guy.
Not Bill. The British guy.
He's Australian guy.
Jim Jeffries.
Jim Jeffries, that's the one. Jim Jeffries, awesome. Anyways, okay, so that's kind of the hunting, trapping, fishing argument. There's conservation, the best meat that money can buy.
Not everyone can do it though.
Well, no, not everyone.
If we all stopped buying beef from the store and went out and shot a moose,
yeah, no, of course,
be any moose,
it's not everybody can do it. You're right, absolutely. But if you eat meat and you hate hunting, you need to rethink that.
Yes, meat doesn't come from the grocery store. Meat simply passes through the grocery store.
Exactly. So, anyways, okay, so we talked in depth about that kind of stuff. One other thing that we kind of touched on last time was indigenous use, traditional use by Aboriginal peoples in the community. I realized last time we talked about medicine trees, and what we meant to say was prayer trees. Prayer trees are the trees that have the brightly colored fabric wrapped around them. And I'm not going to speak to their purpose because I don't know and I don't want to butcher it. And I'm just going to wait until I have the appropriate guest on to talk about that. So that'll happen eventually. But yeah, the indigenous population, the communities, they have a lot of spiritual value in the forest, and they have all kinds of medicine plants that they utilize, all kinds of food, all kinds
plants
of
for paint bundles,
all kinds of things,
all sorts of things to use. So
yeah, and the hunting and fishing and trapping that they did was literally to sustain their family. That's how they clothed themselves. That's how they fed themselves. Yep. That's how they created tools, everything. So that was part of their society, and you don't want to try and take that away from them because you will get a huge backlash because it is part of who they are.
Yeah.
And traditional knowledge too. There's a lot of traditional knowledge out there that us as, I guess, non-natives don't have access to. And we should be confronting these people and asking their opinion and asking for their help because they know things that we don't know. They understand the way things work in a completely different way, different perspective. So we should be asking those communities for their knowledge and their help in managing the landscape so that we can make sure that everybody is maintaining and sustaining the forest the way it is and managing it for all values, not just what we deem valuable, but also what other cultures deem valuable.
First Nations have an interaction with the forest that we don't. What I mean by that is, they know where the animals have been historically for years, right? My grandfather was always able to find elk here, this and that, these plants were here. And so in their lifetime, if they're seeing a shift in animal populations or where there is and isn't water, where the snowpack is staying, where it's not, that's valuable as recreational users, as forestry professionals to sit down and have that conversation because they have an insight into their local environment that we don't.
Totally. And a lot of it's not written down. From my understanding, a lot of it is just passed on from generation to generation vocally. And if those generations aren't speaking about it, then that information is lost. And it's not carried on. If they don't have that
practice of being able to go out and do their trapping, being able to go out and do their hunting or use, prayer trees or go out and to forage for medicines and paints. And they're not getting out on the land base. They're not practicing their culture. They're not interacting with it in a way that they have for so long. And there's a lot of value to maintaining that cultural practice. So,
of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
No, and to be invited to have a little bit of that knowledge or to be gifted some of that when we're sitting around a table is very, very valuable to us.
Yeah. No, for sure. No, it's another huge value that we want to manage for and keep those things protected and sustain them for generations to come. We were talking about camping and hiking and all that other kind of stuff. And last time we talked about biological diversity a lot. There's all kinds of ways. There's all kinds of types of diversity in the landscape. So there's species diversity in literal flora and fauna. So plants and animals and insects. And then there's also ecosystem diversity. So you want those different ecosystems to exist. So you want the dry pine stand to exist. You want the lowland bogs to exist. You want everything.
Right. The nice, perfectly poplar forest or aspen forest.
Yeah, you want
no
the
conifers,
yeah.
and then you want your nice big pumpkin spruce stands where it's just moss and spruce.
Yeah, yeah, and allowing for those caribou to survive, and owls and all kinds of other things.
Sports. Yeah, owls.
Yeah, you want the mountain areas to exist. You want a range of diversity of different plant species and geological material to allow for different ecosystems to provide different habitat for different things. So you want that to exist. There's genetic diversity. So we want there to be a plentiful enough population of all these animals and species and plants and insects that their genetics are plentiful enough that no one, say, disease could take them out.
Yep.
So that could be a huge problem, right? So we want to make sure that we don't get down to, the last 3 caribou.
And they're severely inbred.
Yeah, and they're all
because they've been isolated to one pocket.
It's super susceptible to any kind of outside influence, right? Yep. So we don't want that. We want to make sure that the genetic diversity is broad, wide, and available. So those are all things that are super, super important. We want to...
Yeah. And that all has value, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you can get some deer that have huge racks and other deers that have okay racks. And there's just the genetic diversity and the genes flowing. And I mean, it's all valuable.
By racks, he definitely means antlers and not the other thing.
Of course I do. I'm not even a hunter, and I know that.
You never know. I don't know who's listening.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But there's value to genetic and biological diversity, and then even just the aesthetics, right? The mountains have a different kind of special warm tummy feeling when you look at them.
That's the next thing I was going to say.
The plains, or then a nice bit of forest.
Yeah. So there is the idea of multiple use in the sense that people, even if you don't utilize the outdoors, you don't utilize nature, you still like to know that it's there. You still like the idea that there's wolves that exist. Yeah, there's giant Douglas fir stands that exist. There's these mountains where you can find these beautiful goats and bighorn sheep, and you can find cougars and grizzly bears and pileated woodpeckers and chickadees and
somewhere.
Moose and everything. All of those things, muskrats, beavers, all of these things and everything in between. You like knowing that they exist. It makes you feel, or at least it makes me feel anyways, warm and happy and good to know that those things are out there and that I can go and check them out anytime I want to. They're available and they're public land, right? They belong to all of us, so we are allowed to go out there and just explore, right? And there is this idea that those things are super important. Even if you don't utilize them, we should be able to, as a culture, be happy that they exist. In my opinion, it's a crime to allow something like, say, the caribou, or a crime to allow something to go extinct and have done nothing about it, especially if we played a role in that, right? If something is to go extinct because of us, that's a pit of sorrow. It's horrible, right? Everyone feels bad about that, and
it feels like
life moves on, but we've lost something precious there by losing that diversity, by losing that piece of the ecosystem, right? So things will change, right? So if you were to lose something like the wolves on the landscape, you'd have a trophic cascade of to no avail. What trophic cascade just means that those species they're keystone species. They affect everything they come into contact with. Yeah. So a wolf eats a deer, and deer eat grass, and it's this big food web situation, right? So if you remove the wolves, all of a sudden there's no wolves, there's no predators taking care of the deer and elk population, and they explode.
Overbrowsing,
they overbrowse and overgraze. So all of a sudden you've got a dust bowl.
Or a conifer dominant stands are popping up.
There's all kinds of things.
Deciduous trees are being consumed when they're just saplings.
That's the idea of an ecosystem, right?
That happened.
What's that?
The wolves are extirpated, and then
Yellowstone.
Yeah, the ungulate population exploded, and it hampered their deciduous tree growth. And they actually had to reintroduce the wolves, and then they were finally getting aspen and poplar.
Yeah, they introduced the big Alberta wolves. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they messed up the elk population pretty good. But you know what happened?
They found a
totally new balance, and the whole Yellowstone ecosystem changed and went back to more of what it used to be like. The diversity expanded and explored, and it got more rich, right? So
yeah, a bunch of birds came back that hadn't been
yeah,
present because they had nesting territory and food supply again, insect populations.
Yeah. So people were upset there was less elk, so they weren't seeing as many elk. But guess what? As a whole, the ecosystem was much healthier, much better off because the wolves existed, right? So that's one of those things. The keystone species, and we want to keep everything around. And even if it's not a keystone species, even if it's something.
Even if it's a pest.
You don't pathogens even, or you want insects, people like mosquitoes, right? They're probably a keystone species if I had to guess. I think if you got rid of the mosquitoes, you probably have a problem. But yeah, you want to keep them all, even if that's the next step in this conversation is a word called charismatic megafauna. And this is a word that's been around for a long time. And it basically explains all those animals that people know about that they've never seen, and all those animals that people feel warmly about when they think about nature. People think about bears, and they think about wolves, and they think about elk and moose, and they think about panda bears or koalas, or they think about lions and elephants. And these are all these big animals that we have personified in Disney movies and all these kinds of things, and people feel connected to them, and they feel some kind of, I don't know, personal.
Like they have a default personality.
Yeah.
Like at any moment you could walk up and have a conversation and you know how it would play out, right?
Yeah.
The rabbit would be like upbeat and super happy to talk to you.
What's up?
And the bear would be like, maybe it's a villain, but it's probably more like a really comforting uncle figure.
Yeah.
And like it's this weird personification that we've done through media.
Totally, yeah. So and people tend to only really pay attention to those animals when we're talking about conservation. They pay attention to those very personified, very heavily. They're in the media all the time, right? Yeah. They're everyone knows
they're
about.
Like a common aesthetic that you see in
Disney
movies.
Exactly, but you don't ever see, Save the Grasshopper, or not that the grasshoppers need saving. I'm just saying, like there's a lot of species out there that could probably use help, but people or the conservation organizations, they use those charismatic megafauna as a tool to capture the public's attention and say, hey, look, give to us, we can protect this animal. And they may use that money just for that animal. More likely they're using that money for all the animals that need it. So yeah, but it's a charismatic megafauna. It's an interesting word. I like it.
How pretty are elk? Give us money to protect elk.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, that's also going to go to like bull trout conservation.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that, right? Yeah. So there's the charismatic megafauna.
Fish just don't sell the same way that a beautiful grizzly would, or a wolf pack.
Yeah, exactly. Or native grasses, or
just a picture of like a fescue. Yeah, please give us money. Like, why am I looking at someone's lawn?
Yeah, no, or whatever, right? So, that's the whole Disney kind of the Disney effect. Where people
I call it the Disney effect, but it's probably charismatic megafauna.
Well, it's all useful. I like both. The Disney effect has a good ring to it. I'm sure we're not the first people to use that.
It's this idea that everything is so warm and bubbly, and there's squirrels running around. And I remember kind of coming into conflict with that. Yeah. This Disney effect and this way I've been manipulated. We had a biologist at a talk who put up a video, and he had put trail cams up in bird nests.
Yep.
And the video was a squirrel climbing up the tree, and all the little young baby birds stick their necks up thinking mom's going to regurgitate some food.
Yeah.
And a squirrel just grabs one of them by the neck and rips it out of the nest and pulls it down the tree to kill it and eat it. And that's when you have this moment of, oh, squirrels don't just eat cones. And you go, oh, right, it's an animal, and this is the wild, and this is not Disney, and they'll eat anything they can. And I never even realized that squirrels will eat meat.
Oh, yeah. No,
it was a fall from grace.
People think that there are, technically speaking, there are carnivores and omnivores, and there's, but
winter's coming.
But winter's coming, and animals will take all the chances they can get to get extra calories. There's, if you Google deer eating mouse or deer eating bird, there's 100 videos, and animals will basically eat whatever they can get their hands on. I mean, they know what they can consume and what they can't, but yeah, for the most part, deer eat mostly grasses and forbs and some woody material, right? But if they get their hands on a mouse that's got 2 broken legs, like they're not going to hesitate. That thing's going down.
You gotta eat.
Yeah, they got to stay alive through
It's a jungle out
4 to
there.
6 feet of snow, and in the middle of winter where there's they have to dig down to get their food, and just the calories involved in that are
Dry,
ridiculous.
Terrible grass under snow.
Yeah.
It's half
Yeah.
frozen.
Oh, it's useless.
Garbage food.
So yeah, animals they're not always so cordial, I
No.
guess.
Yeah. They're not Bambi.
Yeah, squirrels, murdering squirrels.
Squirrels murdering squirrels. Squirrels murdering birds. Just
Or
carnage.
bears even. Bears have been known to eat other bear cubs of the same species. Yeah, when they come out in the springtime, they'll just take them down because of, who knows, I can't say why, I'm not in a bear's head, I don't know the psychology of black or grizzly bears, but
That's weird. I thought you would.
I'm working on it. I'm getting there. But they've been known to go after the sows when they're giving birth and just taking that cub and consuming it, right? And even actually, there's a video, I wish I didn't. Yeah, there's a video you can find online where there is a sow who has a cub, and this boar comes in, mauls the cub dies. The sow manages to chase off the boar, so it's just the sow and the dead cub. She nudges it a couple times and realizes it's gone. She started eating it.
Yeah.
Nature's vicious.
That's the forest. That's the wild. That's the part Disney, as cold and as crazy as
Yeah.
the dad getting shot and the mom burning in a forest fire is. It kind of gets more hardcore than that.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's bananas.
But you should still support conservation efforts, and you should still daydream about a bunny being a friend with a fox who has a bear as a guiding uncle figure. Go for it.
Yeah. Zootopia.
Zootopia. Yeah, it's Zootopia out there.
But yeah, there's all kinds of values out there in the forest, right? And I'm sure there's a million that I haven't mentioned. Like there's oil and gas, there's minerals. There's a lot of stuff.
There's
going
water.
on.
Water's a huge one.
Water
Filtration, water storage, and then just the recreational use of water.
Yeah.
So that even covers like your mudders and your swamp people that put the huge tires on and go ripping. Yeah. That's your kayakers, your whitewater rabbiters, people who like to fish and canoe on lakes and stuff.
Yeah.
Water's a huge one.
Yeah. I like water.
Oh yeah.
How about you?
I'd love it.
Big fan.
Yeah. So all those marshes and bogs that were like, ugh.
They're important.
Well, super important. There's a phenomenal amount of water moving through that.
Yeah. And species diversity, right? There's all kinds of different things. There's peat moss. There's all kinds of different, totally different interaction going on there.
Yep. Insect populations and stuff that are dependent on little stagnant pockets of water.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
All that stuff. So, yeah. So I think that pretty much sums up kind of what I wanted to talk about today.
Just values and uses of different parts of the land base.
Just cool stuff about the forest, basically. Just all the reasons to love it, all the reasons to get involved, all the reasons to, say what it is you want, talk to your local management, and just get your voice heard. Make sure that it's not left in the dust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for any consultation for forestry operations or any changes to park boundaries or protections.
And if you don't know who is managing your particular forest area that you're interested in, you can go on the Government of Alberta website. And if you're not in Alberta, I'm sorry, I don't know, but it's available. If you start Googling it, start searching, you'll find it, and you can figure out which company is exactly in charge. Or it might not be a company, it might be the government. The government does manage some areas of forest, and they provide opportunity for other outside companies to come in and manage the timber, but the government manages the rest of it. But it may be the government, but you can get in contact with these people and figure out exactly who you need to talk to. And you can talk directly to them. Hopefully they should be providing public seminars and all kinds of things, but phone call works just as well. Sometimes better.
Yep.
So
best piece of advice is to be as open-minded as you can when you go into these things, because we have a lot of influences from both sides, right? So you have people like us in industry who can argue all day that these things are fine and these things are acceptable, and you have lobbyist groups and other people that are arguing that
we obviously have biased opinions.
There's bias everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So we live in a world where it's very easy to be polarized and want to hang to one side or the other. But I really do recommend, if you're going to go out and get involved, to just come in kind of a middle gray space. Yeah. Really listen, and then add up your opinions, your experiences, the information you're getting. Do your research, fact check. Check things out.
Yeah.
And then
get informed before you
form
an opinion and start you know, bloating it out for everybody to hear, because it's really easy to hear, you know, your buddy tell you something about, you know, whatever, bear conservation, and that's totally wrong, but sounds right, and to go out and make an ass of yourself. You don't want to do that. You want to be on the right side of the argument, right? So make sure that you do your research, and if you don't know the answer to something, don't be afraid to ask. Yeah, there's people out there that are, and including me, I will answer your questions if you send them to me. If you go to if you send me an email at yourforestpodcast@gmail.com, I can answer any questions you have. This podcast is available on iTunes and on yourforestpodcast.com. So we will, thanks for listening. Please rate and review. That helps me out a lot. That is kind of the way in which iTunes figures out levels and how high you rank and all that kind of stuff. So
helps you with
ratings and reviews. Please go on there. Just give me some stars, write a little blurb, whatever you got to do. I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you guys next time.